Welcome to Why You're Reading.
Today, we're going to be discussing Sally Rooney's Intermezzo, because when it was released, everyone was asking, is Sally Rooney worth the hype? After an impressive run of Conversations with Friends and Normal People, and then a little less than impressive Beautiful World, Where Are You? We're here to now answer the question, has Sally Rooney redeemed herself, or has she run her course? Hi, Ellie.
Hi, Ellen.
How are you?
Oh, Jinx.
Jinx.
How's your cold?
It's good. I have a little Victorian child immune system that tries to strike me down at any moment. But, it's fine. We persevere. And it's just kind of an exercise in method acting of, like, sounding like I've been smoking a pack a day, like a Sally Rooney character, when actually it's just my weak-ass lungs. But, yeah, it's fine.
It's
How are
very on
you?
trend.
It
It's
is
very
very
on
on
trend.
trend.
It's all good. But we have, like you said, been reading Intermezzo by Sally Rooney, which is a book I've
Mhm.
been very excited to read and finally glad to have an excuse to read it because it is a beast. At least it is to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And I've been seeing the amount of people that I've seen reading it on public transport or in like cafes or whatever. It's just been everyone. One of my friends, when I was talking about how we were doing Intermezzo, made a joke that she saw online that it's like this meme of, oh, like I'm a waifish little brunette getting my coffee and a sweet treat and going down and to read my intermezzo, and I sit across from another waifish brunette having a coffee and a sweet treat reading intermezzo. And like that's just it's a
Yep.
great day for waifish brunettes everywhere, I guess.
It definitely became the must-have accessory, a bit like a Birkin bag, except
It
more
is, yeah.
affordable for some.
It's like a status symbol.
It is.
But we've been talking about doing an episode on Sally Rooney since we like conceptualized the podcast essentially, like with our first meetings with our producers. I think one of the first podcast topics that we brought up was intermezzo, and so now we're finally here. We're doing it.
We're very excited, and I feel like we need to tell everybody at this point what it's actually about because it is
Yes.
slightly different from the previous books that Sally Rooney's done in that it's about brothers, which is a
Yeah.
relationship she's never really investigated before. So to kind of summarize it, we follow two brothers. One's called Peter, one's called Ivan. Peter's the elder and Ivan's the younger. Peter is this very successful lawyer he's been in love with a woman called Sylvia for ages, and is now seeing a young woman called Naomi, but is still in Sylvia's life. Then we have Ivan, who's 22 years old. He's a little bit different. He's a chess prodigy, and he is starting a new relationship with an older woman called Margaret. And that's kind of where we find ourselves at the beginning. And then the opening chapter is all about these two brothers who have just been bereaved at the loss of their father and how they're coming to terms with it. But it's a different fare from Sally Rooney, who previously done a lot about relationships and love, cheating, adultery. I think the other ones are more about romantic love, and whilst this one touches on it, it's more about brotherhood and sibling love. So yeah, what did you
Yeah.
think about it? What did you think when you saw that blurb when it came out?
I thought it was interesting. I read an interview somewhere where Sally Rooney said that she always writes love stories, but they're not romance. I was intrigued to see that it was brothers, and I don't know if it was a conscious decision or if it's just how it played out, but it's quite a turn from the rest of her protagonists, which all felt very like autobiographical, and she has like persistently said that her books are not autobiographical, that it's fiction.
Yeah.
And I think like this book, with it being two male protagonists and two brothers, kind of like stamps that firmly, like this is a work of fiction. And even though there's some overlap with her personal life in that characters go to Trinity, they live in Dublin, etc., etc., it's firmly a work of fiction. She still explores romantic relationships and kind of the gray areas of romance and kind of undefined relationships. I think it feels like a very modern novel in that way, of their like situationships almost, but like a bit more elevated in a kind of a literary sense,
Because
instead
what
of
is a
just like these people's.
situationship? I feel like I've missed out on this trend. What is a situationship?
A situationship, well, God bless you.
Thank you.
A situationship is basically like two people seeing each other, they're sleeping together, and they tend to do quite romantic, like intimate kind of things, but normally one person won't fully commit, so there's no
Okay.
kind of label on it, but this could go on for months, so it's like they're essentially your boyfriend or your girlfriend, but there's no firm label or commitment.
To be honest, I used to just call that dry dating. So to be honest,
Oh.
situationship is probably a nicer term than dry dating. But that is what I used to call it. It's just like you're dating somebody and you are, like, say, romantically involved, or it feels like you're romantically involved, but you're just not sleeping together, or you're sleeping together but you're not romantically involved, or commitment. So yeah, okay. So I hadn't realised that was a situationship, but that is very present in her novels, I think,
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
term, and that's definitely a new term for me.
I think it's often a thing that's like a manipulation kind of thing where it's like, oh, we don't have a label or anything, so I'm allowed to like sleep with whoever I want, kind of, you know?
Got it,
Yeah.
non-exclusive. So the story is primarily about these two brothers, but actually we spend most of the book in each of the brothers' heads separately when they're not together. So actually they spend a lot of time with their respective others, the situationships, the girlfriends.
The novel is structured around flipping between the two perspectives. And for Peter, who's the elder brother, he's, I think, 32. He has a relationship with two women, a long-standing relationship with an ex-girlfriend who's kind of also part of their family, like very ingrained, but because of an accident, she is unable to have sex anymore and she has chronic pain. And I think like neither of them are fully committing to a full relationship because of that. And so he has a sexual relationship and kind of a transactional relationship with a woman named Naomi, where he like basically kind of provides for her. It's almost like a sugar daddy relationship, but they do actually love each other as well. And
Because she's so much younger than him as well. So when I remember reading on the page, it's like, oh, they're similar age. And I was like, oh, she's a student. He's 32, or he's in his like,
yeah,
early 30s. There's an
yeah.
age gap here.
Yeah, and the age gap is also in the other brother's relationship where it's the inverse where he is 22 and the his love interest is I think 36.
Yeah, she's in
Yeah.
her mid 30s, yeah.
Yeah. I think Sally Rooney definitely wanted to use this novel to explore the like age gap relationships and kind of the concept of polyamory and kind of all these non-conventional relationships, which even though these like those two themes are kind of new to Intermezzo, the non-conventional relationships are like a theme throughout her works, as we like talked about with like normal people
Yeah,
of that kind of
conversations with
situationship dynamic.
friends,
Yeah.
in particular, like the kind of wife swapping, or the friendship in conversation with friends. One of the main characters ends up sleeping with the husband of a woman that she connects with, but the wife is very aware of it and is almost supportive of the relationship, the adultery. It's I like the fact that Sally Rooney does bring in these different relationships and shows you that it's not just the kind of man meets woman or man meets man or woman meets woman and live happily ever after. I like that she really does challenge societal norms, I suppose. And the fact it's two brothers, which I keep going back to, but actually this is the first time I've read a contemporary novel about brothers that hasn't involved warfare or the army, or betrayal
Yeah.
of some kind. It feels like this is just a story about two brothers grieving and trying to reconnect. And that's really quite beautiful in its own way. And I was really looking forward to reading that dynamic. But I'm going to say, I'm going to say it now, I was disappointed in this book. I texted you when I got to chapter 14, which is about 300 odd pages in, and I texted you while I was still reading, going, I finally care about these boys. But it took 300 pages, and it's a 400 odd page book. It really shouldn't take that long. It could have been a great novella.
See, I really enjoyed it, but like I think when I tell people that I kind of give the caveat of like I enjoy Sally Rooney's writing and I also really enjoy the style that she uses of modernist literature, which is like a very I feel like I had to go back to my like my uni notes of be like what how was modernism defined, but it's a very kind of she writes in the tradition of writers like James Joyce and Virginia Woolf of stream of consciousness where there's a slippage between people's thoughts and people's actions and the kind of sense of place ends up slipping around a good bit, and so you very much have to kind of focus in to read.
Like, she is the epitome of a literary writer, and as it kind of there's a difference. You've got literary writing, you've got commercial writing. Literary is very character driven, it's not plot driven, whereas commercial is very, very plot driven. So if you're reading a book like Gone Girl or Beach Read or whatever it may be, that is a commercial read. It is all about the plot. It's how they get from A to B. It's the happy ever after at the end of it. It's the dynamics in the middle of it. But a literary novel is all about the character. It's all about what are they feeling, thinking, doing, and it could happen over a space of an hour, or it can happen over the space, in the case of this book, 6 months, in very kind of minute, close, intimate detail, but you never actually have much of a plot, which is why I think I do like literary novels, but I also didn't connect as much, because I was thinking, what actually happens in this book? And it's the
Yeah.
answer is very little actually happens in
Yeah.
this book.
I think a lot of people describe Sally Rooney's books as like it's just people talking, which is pretty accurate. I feel like maybe here would be a good place for a quote. Carriage pulling in at Malahide, hiss of opening doors, few stragglers with umbrellas getting on, salt smell of the air, fresh, and the doors slide shut. And if Naomi had been at the house last night, he thinks, if it had worked out the way he planned, would she have been happy to see him? To have him come crawling after all, admitting defeat, pleading with her. Perhaps they too would have fought, you know what your problem is, you're a head case, you need help. Or she may in the end have greeted him without surprise, offhandedly, rolling herself a cigarette on the arm of the couch. Oh, hey, what's up? Can you pass me my filters? Watch TV together, talking about nothing. Feel the temperature of his blood return to normal. So all of that is just one block of text. I think like this is a little example that shows how the novel slips between like thoughts and like what people are thinking and what people are saying, and it takes you a minute while you're reading to decipher, is this in someone's head, is this hypothetical, is this actually happening?
Because I think that was why I had difficulty getting into it, because Peter's chapters are written in stream of consciousness, so you're basically in his head, and so he'll jump from explaining something about what he's seeing to suddenly he'll say something about the lighting, or he'll say something about someone else in the room, or whatever it may be. Whereas Ivan's chapters are very kind of traditionally structured. It's much more, let me just tell you what's going on, and I found that a lot easier to follow. You have to really pay attention, and I am not the sort of reader that does that. I have discovered Sally Rooney has shamed me and pointed out that I am a skim reader.
Wow. Do you know those people who are like, I only read the dialogue?
Oh God, I'm definitely not one of those people.
And our first little production meeting where me and you and our two producers were talking about Intermezzo, I was saying that I was really enjoying it, and I was like, and it's very Irish. And you were like, oh, what do you mean by that? And I was like, oh, it's just very Irish, like in some ways of what I was talking about with the style of like the modernism. Sally Rooney is a fan of James Joyce and writes similarly to him. Like I think with Peter's perspective in particular, this stream of consciousness and this moving through Dublin, she has a lot of references to different streets. At one point he like walks through Trinity campus, he works in Trinity campus, and it's very set in Dublin. But then also the way the characters speak, like the kind of the rhythm of their sentences and stuff is very Irish as well. And even like I think the opening, it like encapsulates the kind of the small town mentality that a lot of us in Ireland have, of because it's such a small country, everybody kind of knows each other, and so it's like this feeling
Really?
of no, genuinely.
I know, to be honest, that's true. I have seen that happen in action where someone's just like, oh my God, I know your auntie's sister's next door neighbour's vet.
Yeah,
it just kind of
you'd be surprised. Or like you're only a couple degrees of separation from anyone on the island. Peter's whole preoccupation with like what will people think, what will people say, the kind of gossip of it all is very kind of tied to that like small town thing. This is the very beginning of the novel. It's like, didn't seem fair in the young lad, that suited the funeral, with the braces on his teeth, the supreme discomfort of the adolescent. On such occasions, one could almost come to regret one's own social brilliance.
I keep saying this to you, you could be Sally Rooney. You both did the same course at Trinity.
Don't inflate my ego anymore. No, we did, we both studied English at Trinity. I did English and film, she did pure English. But it's also interesting reading more so in Normal People than in Intermezzo, but like the way that she writes Trinity students, I was like, I know exactly the kind of crowd that you hung around with, and I know that she did do debating. It's so funny, like her version of Trinity versus my experience of it, but it's also just, it's fun to read a novel that's set in your college as well, and there's so much in me that's like biased towards liking Sally Rooney because it's seeing where I live, where I went to college, and just like Irishness in a novel, and I think all of those elements just really endear me to it.
She uses Trinity a lot in most of her books, actually, but in Normal People in particular, that's where Marianne and Connell both go to school, and that's discussed in detail. We see a lot of scenes set there, and then in Intermezzo, like say, there are moments they're walking through Trinity, and it kind of brings it back all the time. There's so many similarities between this book and Normal People for me, and I really enjoyed conversations with friends. I'd actually say that's my favourite Sally Rooney, which I think people are often surprised by. But with Normal People, there are actual lines in Intermezzo that are in Normal People as well.
Yes.
And the one I caught was Naomi says to Peter near the end of the book, you can do what you like with me, which is exactly what Marianne says to Connell. You've also got this theme that runs throughout all of Sally Rooney's books about these emotionally stunted men being healed by these emotionally intelligent women.
A lot of Sally Rooney's characters, particularly the men, is how they intellectualize their emotions most of the time to kind of avoid feeling them. And I think that's also something that's kind of common to literary fiction, of these characters who are in a way like emotionally aware but not emotionally intelligent, if that makes sense, where they know how they're feeling but they don't communicate it. And
they
I think
therapize themselves, don't they?
Yeah,
they kind of they go through their emotions, but they never actually they pussyfoot around it. They never actually communicate effectively, which is a really big bugbear of mine. I hate that trope where a simple conversation of honesty. But then maybe that's because I'm a woman. And the women in the books often are very upfront and honest with their emotions. It's the men in Rooney's books that are not. at the end is it's quite beautiful actually in terms of the sort of the healing post death of their father, and they've had a falling out very early in the book, and then they kind of come back together at the end. And it is, I think sibling relationships in particular are really interesting because there's always ups and downs. You never 100% get on with your siblings all the time, but you 100% love them all the time.
Yeah.
So it's really nice to see them kind of come back together with the kind of ambiguity that they potentially will have falling outs in future because they're so different and they don't necessarily always understand each other and they don't agree with each other's opinions or decisions in life and such. But as ever with Sally Rooney, she does kind of just end her books on a slightly ambiguous, almost jarring way, where it kind of just ends and you think, oh, is that,
Yeah.
have we finished? Is it done?
I myself was curious, like, oh, did she intentionally go into this novel writing it from male perspective? Was this her goal? Then she did an interview with the New York Times where she revealed that the first voice that came to her was Margaret's, who
Really?
is Ivan's love interest. Then when she ended up fleshing characters out more, she ended up being really captured by the brother dynamic, and so that's where the novel ends up like kind of
Interesting. So Margaret was
yeah
meant to be the main character, but she ended up
yeah
basically the brothers butted in
yeah
and took over
yeah
the storyline. As a writer, I respect that. That
yeah.
happens quite a lot. It surprises me that Margaret was the original character that she was writing about, actually, because there's quite a few female characters in this, but because obviously it's from the perspective of two men, it doesn't feel very female centric, but they are a pivotal part of the story, if you see what I mean.
I think one of the dynamics that kind of really intrigued me and also made me like, grit my teeth a little was that I think Peter, who's the elder of the brothers, who's in a relationship with two women, he treats the two women with a very kind of Madonna whore complex, where Sylvia, who's his ex-girlfriend, who can't have sex, is the Madonna, and like she's perfect, and then Naomi, who's a young woman who he kind of primarily has a sexual relationship with, is the whore. And there's like one bit in the novel where he's like thinking about his relationship to two of them, and he says, on the one hand, the love of his life, the high principle of his conscience, on the other hand, his captive, his tormentor, good against evil. That's kind of, I summarized that little paragraph, but I just thought, I wrote in the margin there like Madonna whore. I was like, it's a very binary view of looking at them, which I guess by the end of the novel he's kind of merged them. But it was just, I think Sally Rooney's novels always have an interesting exploration of sex and power.
Yeah, that comes up a lot. It's a really
Mm-hmm.
big theme throughout all of her books, actually, just sex in general. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
normal people, Marianne and Connell, their relationship is very much focused on the physical for a lot of it. But I see what you mean about it, kind of the Madonna mentality of it all. And he's made Sylvia, the character Sylvia, this kind of perfect, can do no wrong kind of character. And to be honest, Ivan does as well. Ivan refers to her as his sister, about how
Mm-hmm.
she's the most important woman in his life. So, so many times. She's such an integral part, but she's barely in it. Really,
Yeah.
because of the fact that she and Peter are separated. But I found her particularly frustrating. There was a moment I threw the book across the room, which was interesting, and I'll explain why. Because there's a moment where she is talking to Peter about her injury, about this car crash that she had seemingly on her own, that led to many trips to hospital. We never actually find out precisely what happened or when it happened. We just know that she has this chronic pain and can no longer have sex. But she and Peter still have this really strong relationship. And there's a moment in kind of near the end where she says, let's be honest, Peter, it ruined my life. And I'm trying to tell you that I am not going to let it ruin yours, which is her kind of telling him, look, I love you, you love me, you support me, you look after me, vice versa, I support you. We're still great mates, but we cannot be together because we can't have sex. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking as an asexual person here right now. Sex is not that important if you can't have it or if you don't need it. It's the fact that she is saying to Peter, we can't be together, despite the fact that I love you, you love me, you've proven that you want to be with me, that you can support me, that you can help me, because he went to her house and looked after her when she was unwell and going through one of her flare-ups. But she's saying, we can't be together because we can't have sex. And that is
And it's
it.
yeah, it's also a very kind of heteronormative view of sex because they do bits to like steal the Love Island phrase, but like they just can't have penetrative sex.
Exactly. And the feelings are
Yeah.
all there. It got very frustrating, which is why I threw the book across the room. Because, again, like I say, it's my sexuality, but also it just feels very ableist. It feels very, I can't have it because I'm not whole. And that's just not true. I know plenty of people that have disabilities, that have chronic illnesses, that don't have sex for sexuality reasons or generally just for other reasons. That isn't love, that isn't romance, that isn't relationships. And I found that awkward to read about from a character perspective.
It reminds me of normal people of the way that they used to date, but they're not together anymore, but they still love each other. Like the two characters that kind of won't accept an end to a relationship and like or a complete relationship. I feel like I don't really understand fully the kind of sexual dynamics of Sally Rooney's books, but I also wonder if that's the point of like if the kind of grayness and the all these like undefined sludge is kind of at the point of like examining all these weird little pockets of intimacies, but also sometimes it makes me feel a bit like I don't know, it makes me feel a bit frustrated that I can't get an answer of like what does this actually mean? Like I know things aren't black and white, but I want to have an answer, you know?
I did really like seeing the dynamics between having an older man and a younger woman, and an older woman and a younger man, and seeing the two disparities between it and how it's always the woman that kind of feels slightly more judged, because Peter doesn't seem to really care too much. That he cares what Sylvia, his ex, thinks about it, but he doesn't necessarily care what his brother thinks about it.
But then once Ivan tells Peter that he's seeing someone who's a bit older, Peter just completely like flips on him and is just like questioning Margaret's intentions, questioning Ivan, and that's kind of the start of the great rift that they have throughout the novel.
Here's a question for you. Did you think that was a bit overblown? Because I remember reading that scene and seeing that Ivan has stormed off, and I just thought to myself, why? What did Peter... It sounded, to me anyway, Peter came across as quite calm and a bit, yeah, okay, judgy, but surprised more than, how dare you do this? You can't do that. You must go cut her out of your life. It felt to me like it could have been bigger, particularly for what it then caused. There's like 200 pages of them not talking and blocking each other's number. They even get into a full-on fist fight. I want to quote the Bridget Jones movie. It's a fight. It's a real fight. But it felt overblown for me for that moment.
I
It's
don't
like
know.
2 lines.
I feel like that's the thing with like sibling dynamics though, of like you have all this baggage and weight behind you of this like long-standing relationship, and so you're like, I think that they see me like this and I see them like this, and then it can take something as simple as like two offhand remarks to spark this like these years of resentment building up.
I loved the bit at the ending where Peter's kind of saying to his brother, you know, I think you're a genius, right? And it's almost like the first time he's admitted it and been really sincere. And Ivan, you can feel the kind of the warmth that comes out of hearing his brother say, I really, really admire you.
Yeah.
You just don't
And then
do that with your
Ivan's like,
sibling.
"Do you want to come over for Christmas?"
Yeah.
Like, actually, yeah, we were joking with one of our producers, Eleanor, because she said that she was crying when reading. But now I'm like, I feel like I'm really emotional just like talking about that. Like, do you want to come for Christmas? I'm like, yeah, that'd be really nice. I'm like, oh, that's really sweet.
It is very, very sweet, isn't it? But you're right, it's a sibling. There's so much baggage and there's so much history.
Also the sibling thing of like you grew up with this person, and so especially an older sibling looking at a younger sibling, I'm speaking as the youngest, I feel like they will always view you as like a teenager or like a child. I think especially once you move out of home and like you move away, then and you're not in constant contact with each other, you don't see each other's growth. So then it's kind of like, oh, I still have this image of my brother, of like maybe who he was 10 years ago, but that's not fair to like hold him to the same kind of standard, you know?
Yeah. No, I understand that entirely. I quite like that. But siblings are hard to write because they have the same background for the most part, so they're almost going to be the same person, just slightly different. So trying to get the nuances right, which is why I think Peter's stream of consciousness, whereas
I think there's a point in the book where they make note of like their voices are so similar. It's like, oh, you answer the phone, I don't know who's talking, so I'm like, I guess that makes sense.
oh, that's
But,
such a sibling thing as well. That always happens to me
yeah.
whenever I'm at my parents' house. Oh, is it Lynn? No, it's Ellie. Oh, hi.
Not the disappointment.
Disappointment.
So I think the novel dives right into the aftermath of death. We don't see their dad die like, on the page at all, and I think it's a very literary fiction trope to kind of have the action happen not like off screen but like off page in a way, and so we're just dealing with all the emotions around it. It's a very interesting genre, and I think I only really started hearing about the term literary fiction in association with Sally Rooney.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. I think to be honest, literary fiction and commercial fiction are very publishing terms. You don't go into your local Waterstone and say, I'd like to go to your commercial fiction section, please. You just go to your fiction or your non-fiction. But I think Sally Rooney is very literary, and that's why it's becoming a more common term to use. I think in general with Sally Rooney, though, she has done something which is quite remarkable, really, given that she published for the first time in 2017, when she was 26, no less. She has become an event author. She has become an author when, if she releases a book, the publishing world stops and just everything becomes about Sally Rooney. It's the proof copy that everyone wants to have. It's a campaign everybody wants to be involved with. It's the book everyone wants to be seen with, and it's the book everyone wants to read first. And that's really, really rare. Even the likes of people like Richard Osman that sell massive amount of copies, they're not necessarily an event publication. You don't stop everything. It's not a huge thing with midnight queues. It's not like Harry Potter's releasing or the next Sarah J. Maas. But Sally Rooney is the only literary novelist right now that can do that literally stops bookshops or opens bookshops at midnight.
What do you think is in the kind of the marketing and the publishing that has made Sally Rooney this like phenomenon?
Money. More than money, actually. No, it's not that. Because to be fair, she was Conversations with Friends, like I said, came out in 2017. Normal People came out pretty swiftly. I want to say 2018, 2019. And then Normal People, the TV adaptation, came out in 2020, right at the beginning of the first lockdown in the UK and Ireland. That show, I had a look, and it had 62 million streams on iPlayer in its first year. That is a huge number. I mean, I know we were all locked inside with nothing to do, but that is a huge number. Beautiful World, Where Are You came out, like I said, in 2021, and it was the big release. And I think it was partially again due to the timing. It came out in the autumn of 2021 when we were finally moving past the pandemic and the lockdowns, and people were starting to properly go out again. And so bookshops went hard, and the publishers Faber and Faber went really hard and invested. There was bucket hats, there were tote bags galore, there were boxes. It was the book. And so much time and money went into it and using the momentum. But it sold 46,000 copies on pre-order, and in its first few days publishing, went straight to #1, was really, really well received in terms of sales. But then everybody I spoke to said it was meh. It was mid. It was average. It was okay. I haven't read it. I have a copy. I bought it firsthand, but I haven't read it because nobody's ever actually told me, oh, you know what? It's actually pretty decent. You should give that a go.
I read it, but it was like, I think it was quite forgettable. I really don't remember like anything that happened in that book at all.
I think I probably will read it eventually. If you're listening to this, tell me whether or not I should actually read or listen to the audiobook of Beautiful World, Where Are You? Because I want to know, is it worth my time? Because it's got a great package, but the packages look so different. I'm going to show them onto the screen now, but I will talk it through as well. Like the Sally Rooney Intermezzo is very blue with the striding legs and chess pieces. Beautiful World, Where Are You is very light blue and kind of bubbly character illustrations. Normal People's green with sardine cans.
I love the Normal People cover.
I love I love all the covers, to be honest, but they all look so different, and they all have different branding on them as well in terms of the copy and the text. It's like every single book is an entirely different world, when in actual fact they're very similar, and they're a Rooney. But it drives me mad as someone that likes to have their bookshelf looking pretty neat and tidy with all the authors together, because it looks like I've
cohesion.
Exactly. There's four different books by the same author. It looks very, very strange on my shelf. But I wonder if I don't think she's going to write another novel for quite a few years. I think she'll burn out if she writes a novel every 2 to 3 years. That's a lot of stuff to do and produce.
How her books keep getting longer and longer as well. Like Normal People, I think it's like 200 something odd pages, maybe like 270 or something, whereas this is like 430, I think.
I'll be interested to see what she does next. And to be honest, I think she is many people's auto-buy author. She is the author that when you see the book is coming out, you put it in your pre-order basket, you get it full price, and you read it pretty soon after it comes out, because you don't want to be spoiled. You don't want to miss the hype. You know it's going to be an event. You know it's going to be everywhere. And I say this as someone that's working in publishing, so it's very much in the echo chamber of everybody in publishing will talk and does talk about Sally Rooney. The phrase, it's very Sally Rooney-esque, is one that we use all the time in acquisitions meetings or when we're pitching books now, because we know if you say, oh, it's like Sally Rooney, people are going to sit up and go, oh, we want a Sally Rooney. So she's
become this shorthand for this entire literary phenomenon.
I'm really happy about it, and I think she's an extraordinary writer, but I am going to say something which always makes people go, what? And that is, Intermezzo to me is like quiche. It has all the ingredients I love. I love the ingredients of quiche. I love eggs, bacon, mushrooms, cheese. Throw them all together, I hate it. I just don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it hot, don't enjoy it cold. And I had that of Intermezzo until chapter 14, where suddenly I liked quiche. It was everything I want it to be. It had all the ingredients. It was Sally Rooney. It was brilliant brother relationships. It was literary. It was interesting. Great cover, great package, great marketing. Put it together. The first 300 pages, I was like, what am I reading? I don't like this. I want to put this down. I'm bored now. I do think she is a love it or hate it author. Because when we're talking about Sally Rooney, we're talking about a true BookTok obsession. She's everywhere on BookTok. There's 33,000 hashtags just for Sally Rooney. There are 32,000 hashtags just for Intermezzo. So it is an extremely popular book online. This book has only been available for 6 months. It's mind-blowing. It's everywhere.
Sally Rooney's books are always a phenomenon. on and offline, but I remember there was a trending TikTok audio as well that was about Marianne. It was like, oh, I went to college and came pretty, and it was like some music and everyone was just like making videos to it. Her books just always seem to capture the attention of absolutely everyone, whether or not you care about Sally Rooney, then people talk about how they don't care about Sally Rooney. You know,
she is the voice of a generation. It's also the other term that I think the Independent coined to describe Sally Rooney, and she has proven to be very, very popular.
So you're talking about the covers, and you said it looks a little bit out of place on your bookshelf. Do you think you'll keep it on your bookshelf? Because here we have our little segment called Shelf It, Share It, Shred It, where we decide, will we shelf it and keep it? Will we share it, pass it on to a friend, maybe, or a charity, perhaps, or we shred it and just, well, you've already thrown it across the room and maybe you throw it into the bin. What do you think?
In my case, I mean, I'm hesitant to break up a set, given that I have all of her previous books. So there's a part of me, it's like, no, don't let it go. But I also feel like I would happily lend this to friends who I know loved Normal People in particular, but have previously read any of her other books and who would like to read it. So I think, to be honest, in this occasion, I am going to say share it and not expect it back and not be upset when I don't get it back.
I think I will shelf it. I like Sally Rooney. I think there are a lot of parts of this novel that I really enjoyed, particularly Ivan's perspective. I think also as a neurodivergent girly, a lot of the things that he said about struggling socially and the kind of the envy of people who can navigate social situations with ease. There were like so many bits where I was just like underlining in the margins and I was like, damn. So I think there are a lot of parts of the novel that really did resonate with me. Well, I really enjoyed it, and I think it's something that I'm going to reread like a couple years down the line. But Ellie and I would love to know, what are you going to do with your copy of Intermezzo? If you have it, if you've read it, are you going to shelf it, share it, shred it? You can let us know in the comments on your podcast platform or over at Instagram at While You're Reading.
And if you don't have a copy but you'd like one, please let us know in the comments so I can send you mine. Thank you so much for listening to this latest episode of While You're Reading. We'll be back next week and we look forward to chatting to you then.
Bye!